Medes and the Scythians, who all formed an alliance, launched an attack against Assyria. One of them was not able to do it by itself, but with this alliance, they were able to come against it. In August, Nineveh, the capital, was taken. With one fatal blow, Assyria disappeared from history. Now, if we had time to go back and cover some material in Kings and Chronicles, you would be reminded that Assyria was a fierce empire. And they were very, very ferocious against people they captured. And they mistreated them, treated them very cruelly. And they were a force with which to be reckoned, and they made excursions against Israel, and on one occasion against Judah. So we're not talking about a nothing empire. We're talking about a world empire in Assyria. But in 612 BC, Assyria falls. When Nineveh fell, Ashurbanipal established himself in Haran. Now you look at your map, you remember Abram came from Ur to Haran, probably literally Charan, which became the royal residence of the Assyrians. So he fled from Babylon, or fled from Nineveh, and went to Haran. In 610 BC, the Scythians and Babylonians swept away this stronghold of the kings in Haran, and he ran to Carchemish in Syria. In 606 BC, Nabopolassar met Pharaoh, who had come to the aid of Ashurbanipal. Pharaoh Necho came up from Egypt. Now look where Palestine is. And here they're in Carchemish, that's up in Syria. So Pharaoh Necho is coming through Palestine on his way to assist Assyria. And the two rulers established a stand against each other at Carchemish. Nebuchadnezzar's father was ailing at this time, and he was not able to press the attack. So Nebuchadnezzar took the army, and Nebuchadnezzar conquered Carchemish, drove the Egyptian army back to Egypt. Now when Pharaoh Necho came to the aid of Assyria, Josiah of Judah tried to intercept him, to keep him from going to the aid of Assyria. Josiah, one of the best kings in the history of Judah. But Josiah died in that battle. I think we read this before, but let's go back to 2 Kings 23. Excuse me, and get this information before us. 2 Kings 23, somebody read for me, please, 28 to 30.
Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In his days, Pharaoh
Necho,
king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him. And he slew him at the
Megiddo,
when he had seen him. And his servants carried him in a chariot dead from
Megiddo,
and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his own sepulchre. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in his father's stead. Where'd you say stop at?
right there.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, this is free. Can I give you free information as we go along? When we surveyed, I told you right here at the end of verse 30, you would cover Jeremiah chapters 1 through 18. Now go to 2 Chronicles 35. 2 Chronicles 35, beginning in verse 20. After all this, when Josiah had prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, came up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. But he sent messengers to him, saying, "What have I to do with you, king of Judah?" This is Necho. "I have not come against you this day. I'm not bringing battle against you, but against the house with which I have war. For God commanded me to make haste." Well, now, possibly. "Refrain from meddling with God, who is with me, lest he destroy you." Nevertheless, Josiah would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself so that he might fight with him, so he wouldn't know it was Josiah. And did not heed the words of Necho from the mouth of God, so he came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. And the archers shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am severely wounded." His servants therefore took him out of that chariot and put him in the second chariot that he had. See, Josiah's king, so he's in chariot 1. They took him out of that chariot and put him in chariot 2. And they brought him to Jerusalem, so he died and was buried in one of the tombs of his fathers. And all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. Now look at this. Jeremiah also, do you have lamented? All right, see, Jeremiah wrote Lamentations about the destruction of Jerusalem. So Jeremiah wrote Lamentations over several. And here Josiah. Jeremiah also lamented for Josiah. And to this day, all the singing men and the singing women speak of Josiah in their lamentations. So there's a song that is sung in Judah that reference this good king Josiah. They made it a custom in Israel, and indeed they are written in the laments. Now that's not the book of Lamentations, but they had a book of laments in Jerusalem, and this lamentation is written there. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and his goodness, according to what was written in the law of Jehovah, and his deeds from first to last, indeed they're written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Now that's not the book of 1st, 2nd Kings. The book of Kings of Israel and Judah is another book. We don't have that book. But it's different from our books of Kings and Chronicles. Then turn to Jeremiah chapter 46. Jeremiah 46. Now here is the word of Jehovah which came to Jeremiah the prophet against the nations. Jehovah's pronouncing words against various nations. Verse 2 begins Egypt. Against Egypt, concerning the army of Pharaoh Necho. All right, here, right where we've been reading. King of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, and which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, defeated in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Order the buckler and shield and draw near to battle. Harness the horses and mount up, you horsemen. Stand forth with your helmets. Polish the spears. Put on the armor. Why have I seen them dismayed and turned back? Their mighty ones are beaten down. They have speedily fled and did not look back. For fear was all around, says Jehovah. Do not let the swift flee away, nor the mighty man escape. They will stumble and fall toward the north by the river Euphrates. Who is this coming up like a flood, whose waters move like the rivers? Egypt rises up like a flood, and its waters move like the rivers. And he says, I will go up and cover the earth. I will destroy the city and its inhabitants. Come up, O horses, and rage, O chariots, and let the mighty men come forth, the Ethiopians and the Libyans who handle the shield, and the Lydians who handle and bend the bow. For this is the day of the Lord Jehovah of hosts. You have God there. Notice it's in all caps. The day of Jehovah is a day in history that when the day is finished, history moves on. But here it's a day of punishment, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge himself on his adversaries. The sword shall devour, it shall be satiated and made drunk with their blood. For the Lord Jehovah of hosts has a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. Go up to Gilead and take balm, O virgin, the daughter of Egypt. In vain you will use many medicines. You shall not be cured. The nations have heard of your shame, and your cries fill the land. For the mighty man has stumbled against the mighty. They both have fallen together. The word that Jehovah spoke to Jeremiah the prophet, now look at this, how Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, would come and strike the land of Egypt. Declare in Egypt and proclaim in Migdol, proclaim in Noph and in Tahpanhes. Say, stand fast and prepare yourselves, for the sword devours all around you. Why are your valiant men swept away? They did not stand, because Jehovah drove them away. He made many fall. Yes, some fell upon another, and they said, arise, let us go back to our own people and to the land of our nativity from the oppressing sword. They cried there, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is but a noise. He has passed by the appointed time. As I live, says the king, whose name is Jehovah of hosts, surely as Tabor is among the mountains, and as Carmel by the sea, so he shall come. O you daughter dwelling in Egypt, prepare yourself to go into captivity, for Noph shall be waste and desolate. Notice this, without inhabitant. Going to be without inhabitant. And then he moves on to talk more about Egypt. So here you have this battle in which Josiah, the royal reformer in Judah, is killed. When Josiah was killed, the Jews made Jehoahaz, son of Josiah, king, 2 Kings 23:30. But Pharaoh Necho had gone up and seized Jehoahaz of Judah and taken him away to Egypt. When Pharaoh Necho took Jehoahaz to Egypt, he made Eliakim, and Eliakim was the natural descendant, not Jehoahaz. He made Eliakim king of Judah and changed his name to Jehoiakim. Notice name changes. Get that? Name changes. Here's the king of Egypt changing the name of the Judean king from Eliakim to Jehoiakim. 2 Kings 23, 31 to 35, 2 Chronicles 36, 1 to 4, and Jeremiah 22, 10 to 19. Jehoiakim was the son of one of the best kings Judah ever had. But 2 Kings 23, 25 says he did evil in the sight of Jehovah, not as his father had done. So he did not follow in his father's footsteps. So Babylon fell, or Assyria fell. And with the fall of Assyria, we have the rise of Babylon. You with me now? Assyria goes down, Babylon comes up. With Babylon coming up, we come to the first removal of Judah to captivity. In Daniel chapter 1, the first 7 verses. And I have called that 4 captive youths. In chapter 1, verse 1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Now this was 605, some say 606 BC. This was the first, I'm reiterating now things we've covered. This was the first of 3 deportations of Judah to Babylon. Besides this one, there will be one in 597 BC and one in 586 BC. And thus you have this carrying away by Nebuchadnezzar, and that by should be a small b, by Nebuchadnezzar, and the beginning of Judah's 70 years captivity in Babylon. In the 25th chapter of the book of Jeremiah, verses 11 and 12, and this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. All right, there's this time limit of the captivity. They will be in Babylon 70 years. Jehovah said it. Jeremiah wrote it. And then verse 12 begins with the word then. Is that true in your translation? And so you have a progression. Then it will come to pass when 70 years are completed. Now between verse 11 and verse 12, we've covered 70 years' time. When 70 years are completed, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, the land of the Chaldeans. Notice Babylon is also called the land of the Chaldeans, or sometimes just Chaldea. But we're talking about the same place, and you will consult a map, and you'll be able to see that. And that nation, the land of the Chaldeans, for their iniquity, says Jehovah, and I will make it a perpetual desolation. Now here's the picture. When Israel was taken captive in 722 BC, they were taken captive because of idolatry and refusal to let the land lie idle every 7th year. Covetousness. All right? Jehovah said to Judah, now you see what your sister has done, and you see what has happened to your sister, Israel. Don't do that. If you do that, I will punish you. About 35 years later, we're at 605 BC. And Nebuchadnezzar comes against Judah for the first carrying away. So that tells you Judah didn't learn. And the prophets will say, you didn't learn. This happened to your sister. Jehovah said, learn, turn from your sin. But they didn't do that. So Jehovah says this nation will go into Babylonian captivity. They will be there 70 years. So God used, get this, God used an evil nation to punish his people for their sins. God used an evil nation to punish his people for their sins. just like he had used Assyria to punish Israel. But Jeremiah recorded, when the 70 years are up, Jehovah will punish Babylon for her iniquity. And he will use another world power to bring Babylon down. And we'll see those details as we move forward. Notice the period of time involved is the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem and besieged it. It does not say that he took it. He came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Nebuchadnezzar came against Jehoiakim, made Jehoiakim his servant, and later bound Jehoiakim in fetters, ropes, to take him, notice, to take him to Babylon. It did not say he bound him in fetters and took him to Babylon. It says he bound him in fetters in order to take him to Babylon. But apparently Jehoiakim repented and vowed loyalty to Nebuchadnezzar. And so Nebuchadnezzar allowed him to remain as ruler of Judah. 2 Chronicles 36, verse 5. He evidently pledged loyalty. One writer said, the king of Babylon made an expedition against Jehoiakim. He slew such as were in the flower of their age and such as were of the greatest dignity, together with their king Jehoiakim, this is later, whom he commanded to be thrown before the walls without any burial. This is after Jehoiakim rebelled later, and Nebuchadnezzar came back against him. Now, when Daniel counts the method or the years of the king, he's using the Babylonian method. The Babylonians counted the year the person acceded to the throne, and then his first year, his second year, etc. The way Jeremiah wrote it in Jeremiah 25:1, the word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, which was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. All right, so here's the period of time involved. Now, I gave you years ago, I know you have it, you know exactly where it is, a chronology of the kings of Judah. And if you look at that chart of your kings of Judah, you will see how Jehoiakim fits into this scheme. But not only did Nebuchadnezzar come up and besiege Jerusalem, but Jehovah gave some presents to Nebuchadnezzar when he was there. According to chapter 1, verse 2, and the Lord, that's the word Adonai, gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some, notice that, some of the articles of the house of Elohim, the temple, which he carried into the land of Shinar. Now, the land of Shinar is another way of talking about Babylon. To the house of his god, Marduk, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his god, into the temple of Marduk. If you turn to Isaiah 42, trying to show you the prophets in this period, Isaiah 42, verse 24. The question is asked, who gave Jacob for plunder and Israel to the robbers? Was it not Jehovah, he against whom we have sinned? For they would not walk in his ways, nor were they obedient to his law. So why did God give these things in the Nebuchadnezzar's hand? Punishing his people, Judah. Now, if you go back and study Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, God said, I'm going to bring these things against you. If you'll repent, then I'll change my mind about bringing more against you. But if you don't, I'm going to bring more. Well, more came. And the implication is they did not repent. So this was an important seizure for Nebuchadnezzar. In his mind, this said, my God Marduk is more powerful than Jehovah or Elohim, the God of Judah. Now you need to get that right there, because that forms a basis as to the thinking of Nebuchadnezzar. In chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. There's the background for some of the questions he will ask, or some of the statements he will make. My God, Marduk, has allowed your people to go into captivity, so he's more powerful than your God. It has not entered into the mind of Nebuchadnezzar that God is using him to punish Judah. Now, taking these items, utensils, vessels, out of the temple was an insult to Judah. Now, if you mark in your notes, because the presence of the untouched temple represented Jehovah's presence to the Jews. They believed that as long as that temple remained among them, as long as it was standing, Jehovah would not allow anything to happen to them. So in one of the prophets you will read, the temple of Jehovah, the temple of Jehovah, the temple of Jehovah is these. That's what they'd say. As long as this temple is standing, we're God's chosen people. He's not going to let anything happen to us. Now that was their attitude also during the days of Jesus concerning the temple. So you see this false security based on the temple. They totally missed. They'd made the temple the very same thing that the Israelites did with the ark in 1 Samuel 3. They'd made it a good luck charm. And their thinking was, as long as that's among us, nothing can happen to us, regardless of how we live. So it's the background of the principle of the once saved, always saved argument. Jehovah won't allow anything to happen to us. The vessels of the temple were carried into the land of Shinar, Babylon, to the house of his God. God there is the word Elohim. Has to do with Marduk. Now, Shinar, you go back to Genesis 10 and the table of nations, and you see the beginning of Shinar in chapter 11 and verse 2 of Genesis. The vessels were placed in the treasure house of Baal Merodach, or Merodach, some people say. If you look at Jeremiah chapter 50, Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 2. Verse 1, the word that Jehovah spoke against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare among the nations, proclaim and set up a standard. Proclaim, do not conceal. Say, Babylon is taken. Baal is shamed. Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are humiliated. Her images are broken in pieces. There you have Baal, Merodach, and the other idols. Will not prevent Jehovah's punishing Babylon. Chapter 51 of Jeremiah, verse 44. I will punish Baal in Babylon, and I will bring out of his mouth what he has swallowed, and the nation shall not stream to him any more. Yes, the wall of Babylon shall fall. Now, if you take the time to look at Babylonian religion, and I've only put a few things before you, but you will see the gods that they had, Elul and Marduk. You will see Ishtar and these symbols to these gods, the temple of their gods in Babylon. And they would worship. Notice that Jeremiah said these images will be taken. Baal Merodach was originally an Akkadian deity. The planet Jupiter was worshipped under his name. He was the guardian god of Babylon. And to his honor, Nebuchadnezzar had dedicated a temple. Baal Merodach. Now it seems that Nebuchadnezzar gave up the assault on Jerusalem and did not come into or take the city as he will do in the other two carryings away. So in verses 3 and 4 of Daniel 1, then the king, that would be Nebuchadnezzar, instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs. Do you all have that? The master of his eunuchs. To bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men, youths, in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literally the writing or the book of the Chaldeans. It seems as though Nebuchadnezzar went back to Babylon. But before he left, he instructed Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, to bring these people back with him to Babylon. The persons to be brought were certain ones of the children of Israel, that'd be the people, even of the seed royal, that is, descendants of the king, and the nobles, the noblemen of Jerusalem. In 2 Chronicles 36, we'll spend some time and spend enough time maybe to get your pages turning in 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 36, 6 and 7. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against him and bound him in bronze to carry him off to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also carried off some of the articles from the house of Jehovah to Babylon and put them in his temple, and that'd be the temple of his God at Babylon. Now, among these people taken, and we are not yet to the verse that gives us their names, but we know the rest of the story. So among these people taken, the descendants of the king are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now, when you teach the boys and girls, teach them those names. They can learn them. Those are the Hebrew names of these boys, these men. Now, this fulfilled the prophecy made by Isaiah over 106 years, 3 months before this time. Go back to 2 Kings chapter 20. Second Kings 20, 17 and 18. Hezekiah had been sick, and the Babylonian ruler sent a delegation to inquire of Hezekiah. And while they were there, Hezekiah showed them all of his treasures and the treasures in the house of Jehovah. He said, when Isaiah asked him, verse 15, what have they seen in your house? Hezekiah answered, they have seen all that is in my house. There's nothing among my treasures that I have not shown them. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of Jehovah. Behold, the days are coming, over 106 years later, when all that is in your house and what your fathers have accumulated until this day shall be carried to Babylon, nothing shall be left, says Jehovah. And they shall take away some of your sons, who will descend from you, whom you will beget, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. 106 years, 3 months, at least, in the future. Then turn to Isaiah 39, where you have this prophecy given in Isaiah. Isaiah 39, beginning in verse 1. At that time, Merodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he heard that he'd been sick and had recovered. And Hezekiah was pleased with them and showed them the house of his treasures, the silver and gold, the spices and precious ointment, and all his armory. All that was found among his treasures, there was nothing in his house or in all his dominion that Hezekiah did not show them. Then Isaiah the prophet went to King Hezekiah and said, and we read all of this, and he answered just as we've read back in 2 Kings. Notice verse 7, they shall take away some of your sons who will descend from you, whom you will beget, and they shall be eunuchs. Some translations say they shall be made eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. We would need here, if my friend Gabe were here, I would say we'll drive down a stop. And Lord willing, in 2 weeks, I know this will still be fresh in your mind. We'll try to take up right there. I hope the study tonight has piqued your interest to study behind me and come forward again and review this material. Thank you so much for listening and participating. To those of you on social media, remember our gospel meeting begins Sunday morning with Eddie Kraft, 9 and 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. and then 7 p.m. Monday through Wednesday.